Welcome back. We're going to continue our exploration of the write_CSV function. If you recall from the beginning of our last lecture, we altered the call_datetime column to read as a datetime data type instead of the default string type. We did that so we could demonstrate the datetime format argument. However, before we dive into this argument, we need a basic understanding of standard date and time format codes. Format codes, as they're commonly called, allow programming languages like Python to change date and time formats. People around the world use different formats to represent dates and times. For example, in Japan, dates and times are represented as year-month-day followed by hour:minute:seconds. As it turns out, this is actually the same format that we have in our data frame, and it is by far the most popular format used in databases. That said, there are other formats you might have to use as a data engineer. For example, you might need to use the United States date standard of month, day, and year, each being separated by a slash. This is where it becomes extremely valuable to know about format codes. We've included a link to a standard list of format codes. I highly recommend bookmarking this resource so you can refer to it often. With all this in mind, let's start walking through a few examples. Since our call_datetime column is a datetime data type, we'll use the datetime format argument. Let's create a new file called datetime and pass a string containing our format codes. In our case, we just want to cut out the time portion of this column. So we'll pass %_y %m %d. When we run the code, we get a new file. Within our datetime CSV file, you can see our new date format has been applied. Let's do another example. This time we want to display our datetime values in a day, abbreviated month, and year format. We'll go ahead and reuse the datetime file name from above, and then represent this new date format by typing %d %b %y. Let's run our code and view the updated file. This time, in our call_datetime column, we have the new format. Two related arguments are date format and time format. These two arguments work the same way, but only within their respective scopes. Moving on, let's talk about float precision. Float precision allows us to set the number of zeros after a decimal point within a float data type. Let's create a new file called float and call our float precision argument. Our call duration minutes column has float values that have a precision of 2. But let's say that we want to extend that to 4 in our output CSV file. When we run the cell, we get our new file. Taking a look at that same column in the CSV file, we see that 2 more decimal places were added. Let's review one final argument called null value. This argument enables you to change the default null value when exporting missing data to a CSV file. The dataset we previously loaded does not have any null values, so we're going to have to create some first. Let's create a new column using the withColumns function. From here, we'll pass the literal value of none into the new column. This will essentially populate the entire column with null values. Finally, we'll name the column new_column. Let's print out the top 5 rows and see what we get. In the output, we now have some missing data in the new column. To establish a baseline, let's save the data frame as a CSV using the default arguments. We'll name the new CSV file null and run the code. In the new file, our new column is displaying as blank. Now that we understand the default behavior, let's change the null value. We'll copy the same code as above, but this time pass NA into our null value argument. When we run the code and check the file again, we now see that the blanks are replaced by NA. Depending on where your data is going, the null value argument enables you to save null values in any representation. This is particularly valuable when dealing with downstream data processing or systems that require null data in a specific format. And with that, we'll conclude our examination of various options available when exporting CSV files. We've covered a lot of useful arguments, but there are a few more advanced options that you can utilize. Feel free to visit the documentation to learn about the rest of these. Okay, we'll catch up with you soon.